Superheroes, a new historical series hosted by me, Dumisani Washington. We will explore the powerful and often overlooked contributions of Black historical figures. Each episode will focus on a different figure, from the days of King Solomon hosting the Queen of Sheba to modern times, highlighting their achievements and the challenges they faced. Whether it's Harriet Tubman leading enslaved people to freedom on the Underground Railroad, or Martin Luther King Jr. fighting for civil rights in the 1960s, Superheroes will showcase the incredible strength and resilience of Black people throughout history. Through the lens of these superheroes, we will reveal the ways in which these men and women triumphed against the odds time and time again, and delve into how that inspired the spirit that still continues today. Our forebears did not triumph over all they faced, defying impossible odds for us to stand here and call ourselves victims. We descended from superheroes. Frederick Douglass was born into slavery around 1817 in Talbot County, Maryland. He worked on a rural plantation and later in a Baltimore shipyard. He began learning to read at a young age with the help of his master's wife. Though she was rebuked by her husband for teaching young Frederick to read, as teaching slaves to read was illegal, it was too late. The passion for learning had already been ignited. In 1838, Frederick eventually escaped to New Bedford, Massachusetts, and took the surname Douglass, borrowed from the Scottish romance novel Lady of the Lake by Sir Walter Scott. He married a woman named Anna, with whom he had 5 children. While Douglass is one of the most celebrated and well-known Black American figures of the abolitionist movement, one aspect of his life that is not often discussed is his spirituality and religious piety. Douglass was a very devout man whose faith played an all-important role in his extraordinary journey. He became a Christian at a very young age and was befriended by an older Black lay minister named Lawson, whom Douglass affectionately called Uncle Lawson. In his own words, Douglass explains how Uncle Lawson foretold or prophesied of Frederick's future greatness. The good old man had told me that the Lord had a great work for me to do, and I must prepare to do it, and that he had been shown that I must preach the gospel. His words made a deep impression on my mind, and I verily felt that some such work was before me, though I could not see how I should ever engage in its performance. The good Lord, he said, would bring it to pass in his own good time, and that I must go on reading and studying the scriptures. The advice and the suggestions of Uncle Lawson were not without their influence upon my character and destiny. He threw my thoughts into a channel from which they have never entirely diverged. He fanned my already intense love of knowledge into a flame by assuring me that I was to be a useful man in the world. When I would say to him, "How can these things be, and what can I do?" his simple reply was, "Trust in the Lord." When I told him I was a slave and a slave for life, he said, "The Lord can make you free, my dear. All things are possible with him. Only have faith in God. Ask and it shall be given. If you want liberty," said the good old man, "ask the Lord for it in faith, and he will give it to you." In his 1852 speech at the National Free Soil Convention at Pittsburgh, Douglass said, "The man who is right is a majority. He who has God and conscience on his side has a majority against the universe." Douglass was a master orator who championed the cause of freedom for American slaves. He also began publishing books, articles, and eventually started a newspaper called the North Star. Douglass publicly declared himself a fugitive and fled to Great Britain to continue his outspoken campaign against American slavery. After 2 years of lecturing in and throughout the British Isles, abolitionist friends in Europe purchased his freedom, and he returned to the United States. Of Frederick Douglass's many speeches and writings, arguably none is more quoted than his "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." He delivered the address at the Independence Day celebration hosted by the Ladies Anti-Slavery Society in his hometown of Rochester, New York. It was a scathing rebuke of the hypocrisy of the United States, which still enslaved millions of mostly Black Americans, especially after the passage of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. Still, the speech resonated with the hope of an America envisioned by the Founding Fathers. Fellow citizens, there is no matter in respect to which the people of the North have allowed themselves to be so ruinously imposed upon as that of the pro-slavery character of the Constitution. In that instrument, I hold there is neither warrant, license, nor sanction of the hateful thing. But interpreted as it ought to be interpreted, the Constitution is a glorious liberty document. Read its preamble, consider its purposes. Is slavery among them? Is it at the gateway, or is it in the temple? It is neither. While I do not intend to argue this question on the present occasion, let me ask, if it be not somewhat singular, that if the Constitution were intended to be, by its framers and adopters, a slave-holding instrument, why neither slavery, slaveholding, nor slave can anywhere be found in it? At the onset of the Civil War, Douglass urged Black men to join the Union Army, writing articles such as "Men of Color to Arms." Black men responded, the most noted example being the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Regiment, or the Fighting 54th. Douglass's sons served with the Fighting 54th. In his first meeting with President Abraham Lincoln, Douglass protested the discriminatory treatment of the Black Union soldiers. In 1865, after the war, Congress established the Freedmen's Bank, for which Douglass served as president in 1874, trying unsuccessfully to keep it open. In 1877, President Rutherford Hayes appointed Douglass to be the U.S. Marshal of the District of Columbia. This was the first time an African American was confirmed for a presidential appointment by the U.S. Senate. In his later years, Douglass served as U.S. Minister Resident and Consul General to Haiti, appointed by President Benjamin Harrison. Author Brandon Bird explains that Douglass admitted that he took the post, quote, to represent the interests of the United States and also with a view to advance the interest of a peaceful and orderly government of what is called the Black Republic, end quote. Frederick Douglass was not just a great Black American. He was a great American who impacted countless lives. It is said that when Carter Woodson chose February for Black History Week, later Black History Month, he did so because Lincoln's and Douglass's birthdays were that month. Like Lincoln, Frederick Douglass's contributions helped shape our nation. Frederick Douglass, superhero.